right, guys, welcome back to Full Circle with Joyce. Jumping now to our next segment, we want to talk about how Kenya's curfew is affecting businesses and the economy at large. With me here in studio, I have Isaac Wabuge, who's a leadership and governance expert. Welcome back to the show. And of course, now we've been talking about how we've been forced to adopt to a new lifestyle, right? And just a new time schedule, you know, from dusk to dawn. And all over, we're trying to cope with these changes to our lives. From salaries to how we relate with one another, where we can go, what time we get there, what time we leave there. But you know what? There's also significant effects on our productivity, on our businesses, and our economy at large. Isaac, just even from your own perspective in your own life, we're now in the third round of this 21-day curfew.
Yeah.
How has that been taking you, by the way? It's been a while since we saw you.
Yeah. Sure. It's been quite a tough moment for our country.
Yeah.
And as you've rightly put it, all the sectors in the economy are affected, but more so even family. There is a huge impact on family, both positive and negative. And I think from my end, one is that it's been something new, having children around, you know, monitoring each movement, and also just knowing that you cannot go out as you always wish, just realizing that even economic opportunities are shrinking by day. I think that has been the biggest worry. And just on the flip side of it is also the wrong cases that have also been just coming across from households across the country in terms of domestic violence, in terms of mental health. I think for me that one has been my biggest scare of what is going on. Just families struggling, breadwinners now realizing that, you know, I cannot really confidently say where the next meal is coming from, and then there's the strain in relationship. So the impact has been huge, but we take a day at a time, and thank God that despite the earlier projection, we are in there. I think that for me that one is a glimmer of hope. That our medics and professionals in that industry are doing the right thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, we want to talk about how the curfew is affecting our economy and our businesses, but I think even before then, there's a question as to, do you agree with the extension of the curfew? But even more so, should we have just had a lockdown at some point? Would that have helped? Because it's interesting that, you know, the economy is sort of trying to kickstart itself again. You're seeing this traffic on the roads, people are leaving, they're trying to go to work or to find some money. Yet the numbers are also increasing. So it's a little bit confusing. Like, shouldn't we be almost slowing down because of what's happening? So what's your take on the extension of the curfew?
There's quite a thin line from what we've just put across in terms of do I support the extension or not, or should we have gone through the aspect of the lockdown once and for all, and maybe the curve will have been flattened. But now, where the government is also grappling with is that 80% of the Kenyan population depend on informal sector. Actually, statistic-wise, we are talking of around 12 million Kenyans fully depend on the informal sector. We only have around 2.5 million who depend on the formal sector. So basically, when we are talking of a lockdown and extension of curfew, when we talk of a lockdown, there are people who depend or who work on $1 per day. There are casual laborers who, when they go out, that is how they can feed their family. So one, we do understand that when the pandemic hit China, I think the only issue that happened is that we did not prepare well, because we saw how it was spreading like bushfire. But then from our end, we were still in comfort zones a bit. And so we didn't give in much impetus on trying to plan the impact of this. And so that's why it caught us napping. I can say that confidently. It called to the government napping, in that had we started learning on how quickly we can respond to this thing in case it comes, maybe the effect will not have been. But now when we talk of the curfew being extended right now, and we need to, first of all, when we try looking at the ramification of a lockdown,
Yeah.
I guess the country will actually be on the tipping point of a disaster.
I guess part of what many of us are not understanding is because we've seen the businesses have had to scale down anyways,
True.
right? So in many ways, for the ones who work in the informal sector, have they actually been going to work?
Yeah, when you look at the informal settlements in Kenya, that is where the rubber meets the road. Where you realize that a family, somebody has to go out. Yes, there has been a scale down, maybe in proportion of the kind of job that has been there.
Right.
But at least there are people who are still had to still go out and just see what can I fend for my family.
Okay.
And you see now, that is where the risk has been that now, if we
Yeah.
talk of a lockdown,
Yeah.
how are we going to address the people in Kibra who depend on that?
Sure. So
day to
far,
day?
it's basically to say that instead of all 12 million of those in the informal sector not having anything,
Yeah.
it's just affected a percentage of that.
percentage, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
at this point, I guess, given the state of our economy, our resources available, that's the much better
That is,
option.
that's a better option,
Okay.
as opposed to a total lockdown
Yeah.
of a country. Because you can take a good example, like when there was a containment in Isli, just by day 3, the youth were already arming themselves, saying, we don't have nothing that is coming. How can we feed our people? So you can imagine if that one is spread
Nationally,
across
yeah.
the city, and the major cities and major towns. So I do believe that one thing I know, and I'm sure, is that we have the right professionals and personnel at Kemri. We have the right personnel in the medical industry, whom well supported. As much as, yes, there has been spike in the number of infection, but then if well thought through, I'm sure we can easily flatten the curve, and we can learn from countries that have successfully flattened the curves,
Okay.
and what they have done. And I think we can borrow and leave from such.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So for now, it seems that this curfew is almost something we should get accustomed to
Sure,
for the
sure.
next while.
Sure.
Sad to say, but let's talk about the food industry. We're seeing, of course, those were one of the first places to get completely shut down. But now we're seeing some of the bigger restaurant chains saying that they're reopening. I guess they've maybe gotten permission from the government. They're reopening. And of course, they also employ, quite a significant number of people in this country, but not just restaurants, but the agricultural food items being transported during the night and distributed to vendors in supermarkets in the morning. The curfew certainly has interfered with the transportation of farm products. And do you foresee the price of food going up?
Yes, I think the biggest lesson when it comes to the food industry is it is a blessing in disguise from those sitting on the strategic food reserve and those sitting on the aspect of the agricultural production. You can realize that with the impact of the pandemic ravaging the country day by day, for the longest time, some of us have been shouting out that how can we protect the local producer of stuff. We've been shouting out saying, yes, we have several bilateral, multilateral, and even tripartite agreements, with various countries, and liberalize our markets. But then you realize that developed countries, they are even much into such agreements, but then they protect their own. I think I was actually on this show one time, we were discussing about food security, and I was telling the government that, you know what, the onion that we are eating here today comes from Tanzania. What legislation policies can we have in place that can support our own? So that right now when Tanzania is threatening to block the border for us, we are not panicking what next for us. So the first thing is that with the continued issues we are having with the border with Tanzania, we are going to realize that food production, because we literally depend on Tanzania. Funny enough, even for an orange that we are eating in Nairobi, we depend on Tanzania for that. How did we kill our own? I think for this is a black smudge on the conscience of the nation that cannot protect its own. So that in a crisis like this, we are now portending to a chance whereby now prices are going to skyrocket. But then we have farms in Kenya. So right now, what are we doing to protect farms? What are we doing to protect the people in the bread basket of Kenya producing maize, that is a staple food in Kenya?
Yeah.
What are we doing about those in the milk industry? How are we going to protect them? So for me, I believe after these, or maybe as we even go through these, we need to have a stakeholders roundtable to define how are we going to handle our food security.
Yeah.
Just in case another crisis comes up and again we are caught flat-footed like this,
Sure,
it's
sure.
not right.
Let's talk about, there's a couple other issues I want to touch on. One is, of course, is public transport. They've been really hard hit, right? Already the number of passengers you can carry, even during the day within the curfew hours, severely limited. And then no movement at night. And I'm just thinking of all those bus companies that, you know, would have like 3 buses,
Yeah.
you know, back and forth on the Nairobi-Nakuru highway. Of course, those have been incredibly hard hit. And there's a lot of jobs at stake with that. There's a lot of businesses that we're relying on intercity trade or municipality trade. What's your forecast as far as how they can sort of adapt themselves moving forward?
Yeah, I think matatu industry has been hard hit so much. Any time you pass through their parking points, you still realize that they are still full because of the shifts. Right now is when you are thinking that the aspect of matatu circles are well thought out idea, even though we really the industry really resisted them, because at least they can also have they can release the matatus periodically, so at least once in a while each matatu goes on the road. But now we can realize there has been huge job losses in that industry. We yesterday there was a program that was running actually in the local dailies, that when you go through the I think Northern Bypass or one of the bypass, you realize that all Uber and Little Cab and all these people who have been doing cab are now selling groceries on the roads. So that at least I take home something, so that I don't go on the road and even I cannot recoup back the fuel. So there have been alternative. And yes, our economy is a bit dynamic, but now when you are talking about the branded, fully owned matatus, this one is still a big issue.
Okay.
Big buses right now, big bus companies, they're only doing parcel business right now.
Yeah.
And even the quantity of this parcel has also drastically reduced. So I do believe that we need a well thought through stimulus. I think what we should do is that we need to have now think tanks on each of these key industries. Now, like matatu, they should be thinking of what will be the stimulus plan to that can be injected in. What micro and macroeconomic policies can we bring in that will be able to respond to this pandemic and be of maybe a positive impact before and post?
Well, another key industry obviously is our hospitality industry and tourism, which I mean tremendously hit, and that's a significant chunk of our foreign exchange earnings and GDP. I know the world is now talking about slowly trying to open up to travel again. You're seeing all these discussions as far as how international travel is going to change, but certainly nonetheless it's going to be very scaled back. People just may not have the same amount of money to spend on travel as previously before. What does that mean, especially for our economy, because the two are so interlinked?
The tourism sector is the one that right now it's on its knees. If Nairobi is not a hot spot for tourism that much, apart from maybe the passage through, but then you can realize that all avenues or all hotels that can be able to accommodate the tourism within the country are all closed down. Mombasa is now totally a dormant town completely. So that's why I'm talking of a well thought out stimulus plan for the tourism industry. The government should already start initiating engagements with the tourism players. Recently, a fortnight ago, we really bashed the president for sending the flowers to UK. And I think his response was right. Sometimes it's good to give credit where it's due. When he actually responded and said, you know what, we didn't have anywhere to take these flowers, but we cannot forget that we are going to need this market post this. So standing with them at their hour of need is just trying to tell them, we are together, so that when things
We're not
return
trying
to
to burn
normalcy,
bridges right now.
we know that Kenya was there even during the pandemic. So for me, that one was a quick, maybe I can say, a PR stunt, which was positive.
Yeah.
But now we need to go down to the to now details, to strategy, to the recovery plan.
Okay.
I've been seeing countries like Maldives also greatly hit, and that one is the biggest. It's huge on tourism. They have already constituted committees and council to start looking at how are we sustaining our partners, how are we planning post this. But for us, at least unfortunately we have not had any engagements. It is important. We are not disputing the fact that we need to protect and save life first before we think of the economy. As we have argued out, the economy can be recovered, but life cannot. But then it is a foregoing concern, which you cannot now say, let's keep quiet till when we are through, then get on a round table for this.
All right. So still a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of work pending. And I need to wrap up this interview. Let me just read one comment here by Clara watching the show from Thika, who says, well, the curfew is really hurting businesses. Mwangangi said it's here to stay anyway. So why do we need the curfew? If COVID is not going away, it's just hurting the mwananchi. And a lot of people have just been saying, and I don't know, maybe the effects of that will be even greater. But unfortunately, I do need to park it here for now. When I come back, I'm going to be sharing some of your SMSs of what you guys are saying as far as how you've been coping with the change and the crisis in this season. But Isaac, thank you very much for joining me here on the show today. It's been good talking to you. Clearly a lot of work pending to be done, and unfortunately it seems that unless the leadership and these experts and policymakers come together, Kenyans won't necessarily have the answers they're looking for just yet. All right, guys, well, let's continue to hope and trust and pray to God for the best. But for now, we're going to take a break as we get ready for the top of the hour. Coming up next, still on Full Circle with Joyce, we're going to be discussing relationships with Benjamin Zulu. Today we'll be looking at how to know that you found the one, and of course later on Dennis will be joining us here on set as he works out to lose 100 kilos of weight at 24 years old. That's coming up next. Stay tuned. I'll see you shortly.